Welcome back to Miniature Dragon Comic Review, coming to you live from Seattle, Washington, or parts thereof, as some of us are out in our cars. Welcome to episode 40, which is a milestone. People understand milestones and numbers and how they convert. This is one of those milestones. If you are mathematically intelligent, I'd like you to send me an email at mdreviewcast@gmail.com. I will give you a free comic book if you can tell me why 40 is important.
It's somebody's age at the table.
Yeah, you're thinking too small. Mathematics, sir.
Okay.
40 is definitely an important number, and there actually is a reason.
I have a friend that might even know it right off the top of his head.
Well, I have a Rat Queens number 2 and a Saga number 6. I'm more than welcome to get part with if people get in touch with me.
All right.
But
well, speaking of Saga.
Oh, see, don't take my cut-ins. Gosh darn, I set myself up for that. Speaking of Saga, we're going to jump into Saga Volume 2 today. Woody, anything different about this one than the first one, or did we even get you to do like a history of?
Well, I don't remember. I have to go back and review the episode, but speaking as far as our own personal history, we reviewed Saga Volume 1, and if you're not familiar with the first volume, the risk of giving you a bunch of spoilers, you have two planets. Well, actually, one's actually a moon orbiting the planet. They both have a civilization, one based on magic, which is the moon, and all those people have horns on their heads of various kinds. And on the planet itself, they have wings of various kinds, from butterflies and hornets to bats and birds and whatever. And the two civilizations are at war. The people on the planet are technology. It's a technology versus magic conflict, but in the story of Saga, you have Marco, one of the magic casting people, and Alana, there he is, and one of the technological people, and they met each other at a POW camp. It's so romantic, and they fell in love, and they made a break for it, and they had a kid, and now everybody wants them dead. And at the end of the last graphic novel, we had a big zinger where a couple of people from the magic world appeared in their spaceship made of wood, and they're his parents using teleportation helmets.
Using crash helmets.
Yeah, crash helmets. And so the bulk of the drama of Volume 2 deals with having to explain to your mom and dad why you married her, and the discovery that they're now grandparents, amongst other revelations.
It is interesting. The story itself, going from one to another, does what some of the comic books do in our day and age, which is touch on issues that are present. But I think this comic book does it in such a way that you can distance yourself from the issue and get into the fantasy of it, which is important for comic books, because people read comic books to get away from reality, not to delve back into it in some other form.
We are reading Saga, you realize.
Oh, yes. One of my favorite comic book series. I have all 9 of them up to date, so...
It is interesting though that all the other stuff that you're like, the war and the fantasy of it and all the alien cultures and everything is just more of a backdrop, because all of these people in the story are relatable, that you can look at them and see them in your own life. And the story is about families and the difficulties that they go through, in having children, raising them, and doing it under challenging circumstances.
Alex, you've been quiet.
Yeah. I've just been listening to the two of you. So I guess should get into it then?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is one of the books that I have to say that I picked up because of the show. Between the two of you talking it up and just the fact of it's been enjoyable for me. So the episode that we did, the first one, started reading it, bought the graphic novel, and ended up actually buying number 2 through 6.
I think I gave you number 5.
Yeah, okay. So I actually have 2 copies of number 5.
Okay, all right, cool. We have a giveaway.
If I still have it.
Wait, we have another one. So, full disclosure, the reason I have comics to give away is because I'm stupid, and I go to the comic book store and I go, I don't think I have this one. I'm going to buy it. And then I get home and I go, dumbass.
I make the same mistake with Copic markers.
So, anyways, this is a long-running series, by the way. The one that we're doing right now is from like June 2013. I was going to look it up, but I don't remember.
Yeah.
I will say, since I got back into comic books, where DC and Marvel doesn't catch my attention, Image does a good job of catching my attention with stuff. And I know people are like, well, they're not technically, what is it? What is it when it's not Marvel or DC?
Well, everybody else is indie.
Thank
Marvel
you.
and DC is the big two.
But they're saying now Image has gone beyond, and they can no longer be considered as an indie comic anymore, which I find I don't know if that definition sits, and there's a reason to that, because Image still does things that Marvel and DC won't do, and that is what really draws me into them. Rat Queens is Image too, isn't it? Up here. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is.
So Rat Queens, Birthright, Saga, the three big ones I'm reading are all Image comics. And it's not because I went, oh, look, Image comic made a new one, I'm going to read this. It's because I've read these because of the show. Well, Saga before the show is the only comic book I was reading at the time. And I said, these are incredible. They've grabbed my attention. Where I did try to, I picked up another one the other day. I think it was an Iron Man. I don't have it here. And it just didn't draw me in. It did not give me what I wanted. And it's where it's at. So I'm sorry, I just wanted to bring that up because this is like, we're doing something from 2013. The writer and the artist in this are still the same two people, and they are still going. 9 just came out not too long ago. They're doing individual ones, and then 10 will be out again.
Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. You know, it's also interesting when you're talking about things that Marvel DC won't do, because we had that we looked at Batman Damned recently, and they had the scene in the initial first edition of that initial issue, which is going to be a very valuable collector's item because of this. But
Bat Dong.
The Bat Dong, and then immediately backpedaled and pulled out, so to speak.
They pulled out the Bat beam.
And it that won't be in future printings, and it wasn't in the digital edition. And like Saga is definitely is much more bold when it comes to that sort of stuff. And what's interesting is that I don't think it was in this one. I think it'll be in volume 3, but there was the big controversy where they had the Prince Robot, basically has that he has PTSD really bad, and whenever he goes unconscious, you see basically an orgy on his face. and that was one of the big scenes in one of the upcoming books, I think in issue 12. And the issue got pulled from Comixology, and yet this book we're reading, every issue has gratuitous nudity in it, and none of those other issues got pulled.
So what we're saying,
they show sex scenes between the parents.
So what we're saying, though, is very important right now, is that I understand that we do a lot of stuff and we keep it very kid friendly. Saga is one of those that I'm not going to tell you how to raise your kids, but you need to see it first before you let your kids see it to make sure that you're comfortable with it.
This is not a kid's book at all.
Well, I told you about my Deadpool thing, right? So here we go, a little off topic, but we'll jump right back in. I went to see Deadpool originally, and I knew what to expect. There was a 14-year-old and his mom in front of us, and the lady behind the counter is trying to be super nice. And she's saying, listen, this is like almost porn kind of thing, which, that much not true, but I understood where she was going. She's like, this is a like heavy R. And a lady said, exact quote, "It's nothing he hasn't seen before." And I couldn't help myself. I said, "How much porn does your kid watch?" And she turned around and she was mad at me. But after the show, we made eye contact, and I got I see what you mean now. This is a bad idea.
Well, it's just, the interesting thing about it is like that, where I was kind of going with this is DC takes a risk on a Black Label book that's not even part of the main line. It's a Vertigo book, basically. And the minute there's even the slightest hint of controversy, like, oh, we sorry, we apologize, we're not going to do anymore. And when Image has the same response, it's like, well, so it's for adults. Screw you. Are you going to ban the other 20 books that came before this? That were okay. It's a point, like it creates a stronger venue for storytelling, I think, and for mature content. And quite frankly, this book is not pornography. This book is about real life.
No, and it only has a few things. And in this one, it's a giant ogre, and you just get to see up his non-existent skirt.
Yeah. Well, that of course being one example. Like I love it. Marcus like, Mom, avert your eyes. She's like, what the hell?
I know that scene was like cute and funny at the same time because you can see yourself like doing that, like, oh my God, Mom or sister, turn around, don't look that way. And I just like Mom, like, oh yeah, I've never seen shit like that before.
Well, our parents were young ones too.
So we're doing a lot of talking, Alex. You said jump in, so let's do it. Why don't you hit me with your 3 matrices? I will not interrupt you this time. We'll just hear what you do.
Okay, I got your word doc. So now I'll just wait for Woody. So anyways, with this book, I got to say, it's like, I definitely enjoy the art. This has got a great style between a very fantasy-based, whimsical kind of style, but just enough realism to, have the proportions, the characters, the accurate way that they look. I love the way that this is colored. Just everything about it is the type of artwork that I enjoy. Enough realism, that you can see the way that the characters are, how they interact with their environment, but yet their facial expressions have just something that gives them something very iconic, something very interesting about them. And as story goes, this is definitely a book where I think you do have to read the first one to get kind of like what's going on with the various characters. Mm-hmm. Like the Will and Liar Cat, you need to know part of like what happened in the previous graphic novel to understand, what's going on. And I think it's a great story of like a war, a family, and what's going on with this culture. Why they basically want to stop this family from continue living, and this is just the next chapter within part of the saga.
Well, it's a total threat to the justification behind the war.
Yeah.
Like, because they can have kids, they can have families, means they can interrelate.
Oh, so, yeah. And I mean, that was something that was brought up in the previous graphic novel, was like, there's this assuming that the two species can actually mix, genetically speaking. Like, this is very much like, okay, the only chance of this would happen would make a abomination, make some sort of, almost hideous monster come forth, opposed to, this little girl. Mm-hmm. And let's see, the third one we generally go with, lettering. Yeah. Like I think I said before, within the first time that we reviewed this, so the narrator is the daughter. Mm-hmm. And it kind of goes in with a really interesting part of like, these are journal entries. And I still do like this as a concept, because it's not like, meanwhile at the Legion of Doom, things of that nature. I think this really works as kind of like talking about her parents, talking about what's going on. And even then, like, part of her thing is it's her perspective of what happened in the past. But yeah, when you see the characters, there's certain details that, obviously went different from what she knows. And I think that was just a great storytelling element.
Well, there is a quote from the series where she says that her mom told her, "You don't want to know too much about your parents." Yeah. From the edit, from kind of lettering standpoint, just jumping in as a letterer, one thing that struck me in this issue was I found only one mistake in the entire book, and it was just simply a word got omitted, and that's it in 5 issues. One mistake, and I thought that was really telling, because this is an A-list book. This is a top-tier selling title. It probably doesn't sell as much as Spider-Man, but in terms of just quality and literature and anything, it is a top-tier book for any company, and it's clearly being treated that way. Whereas you go to Marvel and DC and their top-tier books, like sometimes it seems like the editor fell asleep at the keyboard. Like they're just too busy. They have too much stuff on their plate. They can't be thorough, and they clearly have somebody editing this book who is giving it the respect that a piece of literature deserves.
It is interesting because we've talked about it in the last issue, so I should hit with this one because it has been a while. The war that we're talking about between this moon and this planet, they decided very early on in the war, after a couple atrocities, that they would not fight the war on the moon or the planet anymore. And so they've gone and got everybody else in the galaxy involved with it because they'll fight on other planets. And so it is part of the basis of this. But yeah, what do you got? What are you three?
Well, one of the things I find interesting about this is that you do have this war being fought, and they've kind of like made it. It's become accepted. It's become part of the culture of the galaxy, where that's just what's going on, is this big war, and each planet has 4 major civilizations that are on their side and fighting with them, or 3 or something. But it's like there's so many people invested in the conflict, and there's so many businesses, I no doubt, involved in it, because somebody has to supply the weapons and the equipment and the armor and all that stuff and make it for them. And it's just like you would think a situation like this would give rise to another coalition to oppose it, and that hasn't happened, at least that we've seen so far in the story, at least that I've seen. But it's like it is an interesting point where something like this, it's kind of like when we faced world wars on our own planet, where it's like it was very hard to stay neutral. And it didn't matter if you were neutral, you weren't involved. Everybody else got you involved. And there was nothing you could do about it, and there was nobody to turn to. And
it's also interesting to think of like some aspects of this does remind me of like, especially World War I, in the respects of you've got these territories that are controlled by the major powers, where the wars would be fought. Like the various campaigns in Africa, Middle East, Asia, and even certain parts of Europe, where the conflicts kind of spilled over to basically not have it in their home territory.
Yeah, well, like, and people that are living in those countries don't want it there, and like you have this character Isabel, who is the ghost that they picked up, who's bonded to their child, and the ghost is basically came from the planet where they got the rocket ship. And the thing about her is her civilization's gone. Her entire species has been wiped out, and they were exterminated by both sides fighting on their planet, and they're still fighting on the planet. And those people, it's like it's such a tragedy, and nobody cares. It's like not what, like most people in the galaxy don't even know it happened, and it's an indictment of war. Like it's almost like you got like themes within themes, because you've got the book An Evening Smoke by D. Oswald Heist, who's a prominent character in the story. They finally meet the author of the book that inspired the marriage, right? And they meet the guy, and it's interesting seeing that when Prince Robot comes in and who's hunting them on behalf of the Wings, the planet Landfall, and he's trying to track them down, and he naturally tracks down the author, and his interpretation of the book reads like complete trash, and it's meant to like just basically a trashy romance novel where nothing really happens, and he can see the genius in it, that the whole point was to convince people that that the war is stupid, and how like just there's like that theme echoes throughout the whole book, just how senseless it is. And it would be something if more people on Earth got that point too, because like you look at wars that we have that have on this planet that have gone on for so long, and it's the exact same thing in the story, where like you look at the wars in the Middle East and other conflicts that have been happening on our planet that are. And it's like they've gone on for so long that nobody knows who started it. It doesn't matter anymore. It's unimportant. They're fighting over something that nobody has like any personal investment in. They're just fighting because they've always fought. And that's kind of like the whole point to the war. Like the war in the story is just going on because it's always been there, and it's political. There is no point to it.
And the best part is they don't even really bring that up in the book.
No, but that's what's going on. You know,
no,
it's
I get it.
To.
I just you don't have a ton of information either, but that really was one of the things. As far as art, it's what got me hooked into the Saga series in the first place. Yeah. I like that they don't hold back. Again, I was talking about the giant Cyclops thing. It's
Cyclops.
Whatever. I said thing. But when they drew it, they didn't like hold back. And my favorite part was like the way they draw it. If you go and look, like I was like, it's semi-accurate for a big fat guy, isn't it?
Well, thinking about like as the art wise, I forget one of the characters' names, but there's a humanoid mouse female
the medic.
The medic.
Yeah.
And in the book, that character perishes because of the war, and the way that she goes out, I mean, is definitely just very horrific. But it also is part of one of the reasons why this reminds me of World War One. The various gases that were used, chemical warfare. Granted, it was a spell, but at the same time, just the way that it was done. I mean, definitely a horrible way to go out.
I see a lot of differences. First off, we didn't have humanoid TVs fighting.
Yeah,
they censored that.
But but the art is cool, and they like you guys are talking about, and we've said it a ton of times. But bring it back around as a whole, is there's all these plethora of there's species within species. So when you play a role playing game, you usually pick like a species, but they really don't get in depth of like subspecies. They're just like very slightly different. Where
a little bit,
all the wings look different, all the Moonies look different. The spaceships, the art, even the humans themselves have such conflicting differences that it was well thought out for that. Not everything is the same. You bring up Lion Cat, one of my favorite characters throughout this whole series, because it does bring not just because he can tell when people are lying, but he brings that element to it. My favorite parts are when people threaten him. And he takes it seriously.
Hey, Doc, I can tell you where you can buy a Lion Cat T-shirt off the rack.
I don't need it.
Okay.
The art in this is extraordinary. Like I said, when they go species to species, they don't hold back, and they do create something brand new. The story in this, if it doesn't suck you in, you're not human.
Yeah.
It's just incredible, no matter what aspect it is. Like we keep dwelling on the war part of it, but the war is nothing to this story. It really isn't. It's just a background thing that's happening. And then this thing's happening. And yes, the reason they're being chased is because of this war, but the story has nothing to do with the war. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, pick up Saga and start reading it. You will get the gist of it, and you will keep going forward. The lettering, I like when they switch, even when people switch between their language and something everybody understands, that the letter is very consistent in remembering what they've done before. And that is very important. We talked about that 100 times. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just have to make the wheel perfectly round. And that is what they have done in this that I've seen, where they switch to this language, it's red or purple or whatever language they're representing. And they do it throughout the whole series, and especially in this book, you see it as well. I do think it's funny, the whole... one of my favorite parts made me laugh is finding out Grandpa was a seamstress.
Well, no, he's an armorer.
No, he's a seamstress. He even says it. It's just one of those things. And then he's like, well, armor, and he makes a shirt, but it has the special properties. And I'm just like laughing to myself. That was like, oh wow, he can make you a very stylish evening gown, but it'll take a bullet.
Yeah.
You know what that reminds me of? Lucas.
Okay. Yeah, we're not gonna talk about Lucas. Listen, man, I don't have to think about that all the time. But
there is something I would like to jump in with, actually.
Go ahead.
Is that okay? So it was we just did Y the Last Man, and in about 2 weeks I plowed through 6 of those graphic novels. Like I got so hooked on it that I couldn't stop reading, and I didn't even want to stop reading to read the other books that we had to review. And I've had to like force myself to stop. And of course, Saga is just as addicting once you really get into it. And I kind of get it. Like I understand why there is such a Brian K. Vaughan hype train, because like everything he's done has been critically acclaimed. Like he did Y the Last Man, massive success. He did Saga, and Saga succeeded because he had built up that fan base from Y the Last Man. And I'm kind of coming around to the idea that I should probably be reading everything this guy writes. And I understand why people do that, because this guy, you know, it's this is the kind of writing that I think I would like to, you know, pay more attention to in my own work. And you know, it's like the understanding of human nature and the way he presents his characters. It's exactly the opposite of what I complain about constantly in comics. Because like when like the characters have to be relatable and real people, and you can go as fantastical as you want if you're writing a story, but you have to ground it in something that's relatable to the reader. And if the characters behave like total lunatics and they're in a fantastical environment that you can't relate to, I think you can have a tough time selling the story. Whereas if you had a super fantastical environment and circumstances with characters that are relatable and circumstances that are relatable, it's very easy to sell that story.
So, you know, we got 2 minutes. So give me a little bit more of a wrap up for your final, and then we'll hurry up through this so we can finish on time.
Well, damn, this good book. I can't disagree with anything that you're saying, Doc. I mean, I think the book, there are people that are human that won't read the book because they don't want to read comics or they don't like science fiction. But it's like, if you gave the book a chance, I think it would be hard. You'd be hard pressed not to appreciate it, at the very least, and get it.
I agree, Alex.
So, I feel with this book, it's definitely something that you should check out for yourself. And I have to say, it's like I've enjoyed this quite well, the entire series. So this has been one of those enjoyable things to review. And that's part of the problem of like not wanting to get into any kind of spoilers, because it's like something that you should check out for yourself and, you know, see if you like it. Doc?
This Saga series was something I was reading before I got into this. I know people who don't read comics that keep up with Saga. I know people that are diehard comic book fans that got hooked on this and really haven't picked up much in between. I think that's very telling, because there's different aspects of life and everything comes back to Saga's story, which is incredible, which is what I want every one of my tabletops to be like, even though they all end up more like rat queens. But
that's so true.
It is one of those things. I haven't read a ton of this guy, and I really want to go back and read it. But as it comes to Saga, books 1 and 2 and further, I highly recommend it. I think you should pick it up. Again, if you have kids that want to read it, I'm going to tell you to parent your kids. I'm not going to parent your kids, but I would flip through the pages before you give it to them. And aside from that, do we have anything announcement wise?
Well, I figured out what our next book is going to be. I think this entire month is going to be graphic novel month. I picked up the first graphic novel of Paper Girls because it was on sale on Comixology, which is Brian K. Vaughan's latest series.
Okay. Aside from that, we're still working on our internet issues. There's some TSPN ISP number they want, which is not what they're doing. I have personally trying to take care of this, so this should be up and going soon, but for now you can go to Miniature Dragon, which one? But yeah, if one doesn't work, try the other.
MiniatureDragon.squarespace.com.
That'll take you to it. The full thing is there. Thank you for joining us, and as always, read more comics, keep it nerdy, and live your dreams.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
It's like I've been